I guess this last segment of the pod kind of serves as a trade deadline primer, because the next time you hear us, the trade deadline will have come and passed. We talked about Jimmy Butler, the saga, the suspensions. It's getting uglier and uglier by the day. He's still having fun with it, posting memes on Instagram. His car is declining at Big Face Coffee. I think that's because the coffee's too damn expensive, but that's just me. But when you think about that and the scope of things, and I just wrote something, it will get published next week on the most interesting teams at the trade deadline. And we talked about stuff that we wanted to see in this, that, and the third. I'm interested now because, local pertaining to the Raptors, right? Like, they're in an interesting spot where there is Bruce Brown, there is Kelly Olynyk. There are these guys who contending teams, Jakob Poeltl, I think is untouchable, but I think teams are still going to be interested in him. But teams like that are really at an interesting spot right here, where it's very much kind of like a crossroads of what can happen at the trade deadline. And I know that the CBA and all the changes and stuff have made trade deadlines very different and maybe a little less exciting, at least it was last year. But I think the reporting and things leading up to this one makes it at least feel like we could get some action this year.
There feels like a lot of like tangible, gettable players whose names keep circulating. Like, obviously there's like the higher end of like, you got Fox and Jimmy Butler, but then even like guys like Levine, Vucevic, like, like players like that. But then there feels like a kind of like a cohort of players who are attainable, like whether that's John Collins, Colin Sexton in Utah, like you said, if it's Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, Chris Boucher has popped up a little bit. There are other players like Malik Beasley who's popped up. Like, Cam Johnson is a name that keeps popping up, and it feels inevitable that he's going to get dealt somewhere. Like, these are players who they're not going to, lead first take in all these like, talk shows the next day as like the most exciting trades ever. But like, they are trades that can make a marginal impact on, as long as these players end up on teams that, are competing for something. So it's like, I have. Maybe I'm just getting my hopes up because you and I get excited about this time of year and like we love to see like the chaos flying around and everything like that. But like, I do feel like that there are going to be moves that are made that even if they're not like, tier one players that are going to get everybody going, like they are going to be players who can make a difference, make an impact in winning and take a team from maybe, being the sixth best team in the East to the fourth best team in the East, or from just outside the play-in to in the play-in. Like, movement can happen. So, it's going to be interesting to see who actually gets moved. The Jimmy Butler trade is obviously something that, that's going to be, even if Fox is the better player, Jimmy Butler is going to have the bigger spotlight because of the scene that he's caused so far in that sense. But like, Vucevic and Zach LaVine, like those are guys that I would be really, really interested to see if they get moved too. And LaVine's someone who I really believe can move the needle in a big way. So, I'm excited to see how it unfolds, and I'm excited to react to it on the pod too.
Bro, proof is in the results. When you were talking about guys in the margins, I immediately thought about it, and I just saw a tweet. The Mavs are 26-22 and 8th in the West right now. This time last year, they were 26-22 and 8th in the West. Brought in Daniel Gafford, brought in PJ Washington, and those two guys,
both of them,
massive additions. Yeah. Like, I think probably even better than Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd would have expected them to be for what they were doing and what they needed on that team. And that, that was what, like, I guess sparked a run to the NBA Finals. And I do think the way the Western Conference is right now, right, where there are these teams, like the Lakers and the Clippers, those teams in that 5 to 9 range could make a move. I mean, the Spurs are right on the outside looking in. Obviously, De'Aaron Fox is a massive swing, but there are teams like that. And I know Lakers fans are huge about making a deal. And it could be, I know they want Walker Kessler. I don't know if the Jazz are going to be willing to part ways with him, but they might. But it might not necessarily be the name that's like, oh man, this is super exciting, but that is all it might need. That's all you might need to make that run, as we saw last year. And I mean, that's respect due to PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford, who are still playing really well despite everything that Dallas has gone through this season. Those guys have been big sparks for them, or big bright spots for them as well. So I'm very curious to see that. The one last one before we head out of here, we'll talk about real quick the Golden State Warriors. What do you think about them last night? They got a win. Shea had 52 on them, 31 in the first half, but they got a win. They are mentioned in the Jimmy Butler talks, but it seems like, as we saw reports today, I think it was Kevin O'Connor said that Steph is a little leery of what Jimmy Butler would bring to that locker room, even though that Draymond Green is in that locker room, but still leery about the attitude he'd bring to that locker room. So it kind of feels like they are just not going to deal with it, but they need to do something, because there's no way you have Steph Curry still being Steph Curry, even if he's not Steph Curry, he's still Steph Curry, and you don't even make it to the play-in tournament. And right now, that is looking iffy for them. So, Warriors, you think they make a move? You think they make a swing? Like, I think they put themselves in position to do it. It's just a matter of what, right?
Yeah, they're a team that, like, and you know what, actually, real quick before I even get into that, I absolutely love the Gafford and PJ Washington comparison to like this year's trade deadline, because like that really did spark that move to the NBA Finals for the Mavs. Like those guys were, you know, indispensable for them in the playoffs at that point. And like that's where I'm going to segue this into like the Warriors deadline. Like I don't really envision the Warriors being the team that, like, I know that they've popped up in Jimmy Butler trade rumors. I know that their name has popped up in Zach LaVine and like all these other, like, you know, kind of bigger names that we've talked about. But like, I see them making more of like a PJ Washington, Daniel Gafford type move to get a player like, you know, maybe it's Malik Beasley, maybe it's John Collins, who, right. I mean, he would be a perfect fit for them and like what they do on offense and defense. You know, like it's one of those types of players that they're going to end up being starters. They're not going to blow away headlines. They're going to be people that are players that, like, most of the talking heads on ESPN and stuff haven't seen these guys play in however long, 5 years, 10 years right. since they've seen John Collins play, but like still playing at an extremely high level in Utah the entire time he's been right. there, and he's going to impact winning. So like, I don't necessarily think that they're going to be a team that is making this massive swing for Jimmy Butler or De'Aaron Fox, but I do think that they are in a position where they have to make a move in the margins to try and improve that roster, because it's already become clear they just don't have, especially on the offensive end. Like when Steph is on the floor, they got nothing on offense. So it's like they got to find something to help him out. And Draymond being out hurts a lot. Obviously, he facilitates more, quarterbacks them on offense more than people even realize. But like, you know, they got to find someone to help Steph out. And even if it's not one of those big names, there are names out there that can help this Warriors team.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a good one, because I started thinking about what PJ Washington does well and what Daniel Gafford does well. I was like, you know what, like JC does a lot of those things well, right? As far as like he's having the best shooting season of his career this year, and he's been out of the lineup. But again, we've talked about it. Like people aren't paying attention to what Utah is doing, and again, like it's coming in losses, quite frankly. So people will see it very much, because why would you be kind of locked into what he does? And like you said, it probably hasn't been since the Hawks conference finals run that people right. were paying attention to what he was doing. And that was 2021. So very curious to see where he lands, if he's moved, and kind of what happens and what those teams kind of in that spot. And like you said, I think Dallas being that example, a very recent example, will probably make teams more inclined to make deals, regardless of how big, of how small they are. But like you said, I'm excited to see how it plays out. I don't know when you and I are going to record. It might be before the deadline, but we're certain to see some moves come in before then. So whatever it is, whether it's Raptors, not Raptors, league-wide, it's going to be impactful, and we will be here on NBA Sound System to talk about it. Trade deadline approaching, All-Star Weekend approaching. It's a fun time to be an NBA fan. Right when NFL ends, next weekend, you can lock in completely to the NBA. So I'm excited about that as well. As always, thank you all for tuning in wherever you get your podcast. Please make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And on YouTube and Instagram, same handle, NBA Sound System Canada. For Kyle Irving, my name is Gil McGregor. We will catch you back here, same time, same place next week.